Good afternoon, members, officers and members of the public. My name is John Cater, Clerk to the committee. The public element of today's meeting has been recorded in line with the City Corporation's policies, and the recording shall be retained for up to 1 year. Chairman.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Can we take the apologies first? Welcome everybody online and welcome all those in the meeting.
Chairman, thank you. In advance of today's meeting, I've received apologies from Alderman Alexander Barr, Shannon Backf, Deputy Timothy Butcher, Elizabeth Corrin, Simon Duckworth, Deputy Madhush Gupta, Deputy Anne Holmes, Alderman Broderick Masioda, Deputy Benjamin Murphy, and Alderman Shasil Saluja. I am aware, Chairman, that several members will be joining us today as observers on Teams.
Thank you. Can we move on to members' declarations? I'm assuming we've got nothing new. Taking that as read. Well, in that case, can I just start off one apology for these late papers. I think you probably all saw an email which was sent out earlier this week. The budget papers, the lateness of them was entirely due to matters outside our control. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of government funding, but I would like to just make that point that the Chamberlain's team has been working incredibly hard. 3 times we've now had to redo these papers, but hopefully you got them all. I know one member didn't get them, but hopefully you've got your papers on the table. And those will be the main substance of the meeting today. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Turning to item 3, the minutes of our previous meeting on the 13th of January for decision, pages 7 through 12.
Are we happy with these minutes, 13th of January? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 4, Finance Committee's forward plan report of the Chamberlain for information, page 13.
Thank you, members. You will have just received a number of updated invitations for the Finance Committee this year. I was rather shocked by a comment from the Deputy Town Clerk that our committee meetings are costing us at the moment per year in Town Clerk's time alone, £3.4 million, which is pretty extraordinary. I know there's a paper going to policy, I think, on Thursday. I've really made a conscious effort here. Obviously, the less meetings we have, the more that cost reduces. We have now reduced the Finance Committee meetings I've gone through with the Deputy Chairman and the Chamberlain to 7 a year. I think we can get away with that. There are some dates we can't avoid, but I just hope, I'm sorry about those invitations, but that is an attempt to try and make sure that we are as efficient as possible with our committee meeting planning. And make use of our Town Clerk's time as most effective as we can do. So I think you've had those invitations, and the forward plan will reflect those changes in future. Thank you, James.
Chairman, so welcome that. Is that you also looking at the frequency of the committees, subcommittees of finance as well?
I suspect there'll be a topic for policy. I mean, my view is that subcommittees should, the fallback should be quarterly, unless there's a pretty good reason why not. I'm sure that the policy will discuss that on Thursday, but I mean, that's just my view. I would have liked to have gone to 6, but I just couldn't do it, basically. Thank you. Chris.
Chairman, the first time I've heard that figure quoted for the cost of the Town Clerk's services. It's a phenomenal amount of money, and if we recall, those of us who were around at the time of the Liz Vane report, although we reduced our total number of committees and subcommittees and working parties by about 30, in reality, we're having more meetings today than we were having pre the reduction of numbers of committees. And I just would say to members, this is an issue which has been tabled by a couple of members for discussion at informal court that is coming up about whether or not we should look at restructuring again or whether we should revisit. It's a big exercise, and if we're going to do it, there's got to be a possibility at least that we're going to get some radical change. But it has been tabled for informal court, so members who are attending that will be able to express their views there on the whole committee structure.
No, thank you. But anyhow, Chris, hopefully Finance Committee is now taking the lead to show that it needs to, if we've got to get value where we can. Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
Chairman, thank you. Item 5 is Finance Committee's annual terms of reference review, report of the Town Clerk for decision at page 15 through 20.
I think these are what they are. I had a question from Sandra about adding in a responsibility for affordability, and the Chamberlain has suggested we perhaps consider whether we should reinforce the role that service committees have in scrutinising their own budgets. I think probably rather than having a mass debate here, we probably ought to just note those points and see if we can come up with something that is half decent under delegated authority. But unless anybody had any further comments, I think these are fit for purpose, but there are things we can tweak if necessary. Steve.
Yes, Chair. I think at the Corporate Service Committee away day, there was discussion about terms of reference. And I think what we're trying to do is individual committees look at their own terms of reference. What we need is a coordinated look at terms of reference across committees. And one of the things you've mentioned about increasing service committees' responsibility for making sure their budgets are in line seems to me to be really important we do that. As I understand it, I think town clerks are doing some work at trying to make sure that terms of reference across the piece talk to each other, and presumably at some point we'll get something back here about that. Thanks, Chair.
Town clerk, can you comment on that? Have we got Michael?
Chairman, from my recollection, P&R has an overall look at the terms of reference. Yep. They all go to them once a year, and with a report from the town clerk. I think it's really difficult. What concerns me, having watched it for a decade or two or three or four, the reality is everyone concentrates on changing terms of reference or changing committees and whatever. I think the approach that you've taken, Chairman, in terms of reducing the number of meetings is a better one than trying to reorganise, because we'll spend another year or two or whatever it is, and endless wretched meetings arguing about what committee structure. Yeah. Often, dare I say, with people having an ulterior motive for wanting some changes. It just seems to me that we should not keep reinventing the wheel, but merely try and reduce the amount of time and effort that goes into them, and therefore the amount of officer time that needs to be expended.
Okay. I'm not envisaging we're going to change much here, but I think these points are well made. So I think we'll move ahead on that basis. Thank you, Town Clerk.
Chairman, in addition, there was a proposal from the chairman of PPSC, who's joined us online today, with regards to the final paragraph in your terms of reference, re projects and procurement subcommittee. He suggested that we should hold fire now from the change from procurement policy and keep it as a procurement code until the policy is published. So we'll make that change in year effectively. And also the final paragraph, sorry, Chairman, final sentence, it also provides dedicated scrutiny for all city corporations, City of London Police projects as prescribed by the project's procedure, a change from project's procedure to the project portfolio and programme P3 policy framework in line with our current now new arrangements.
Well, I'm sure we can tweak those. We can make some minor tweaks if necessary. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Can we move on?
Thank you, Chairman. Item 6, Chairman, is the public updates of the projects and procurement subcommittee meeting held on the 28th of January 26th for information.
And we haven't got any. We're going to have a comment from Ben in non-private, in non-public. Sorry, James, you had a.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been trying to catch your attention just at the end there.
Sorry.
Because on that procurement point, again, to the point of they all need to tie together. I thought that the Capital Buildings Board dealt with some of this, and when they are dealing with it, it doesn't get looked at by the procurement sub. And I thought that was the case. And if I've got that wrong, fine. But if not, I think it might need to be corrected.
Chairman, we can make an exception for CBB for those issues related to SSD and FPEP. Okay. However, for general policing activities on the PPSC.
Okay. Can we just take those comments? I just don't want to spend too much time on this. Yeah. I think we can spend an awful lot of time and not terribly effectively. But thank you. Okay.
Chairman, then turning to item 7. City Fund Budget Report and Medium-Term Financial Strategy Report of the Chamberlain for decision for your late supplementary packs, members, pages 5 through 148.
Members, this is our first major paper of the meeting. I'm going to ask the Chamberlain quickly to summarise what's in the paper. I've got 5 points plus an overarching one, which I'd like you to think about, but this is then becomes an open for all. Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, I just want to make 4 points in introduction. The first one is we have the funding for the next 3 years, but it is transitional. And I think the bespoke arrangement, it's good news that we have the bespoke arrangement from government, but it is only transitional funding. If we look at the core grant uncertainties, that is very much still the case for 2930. So in terms of advocacy for the services we provide across London, such as the ports and Heathrow Animal Reception Centre, that still needs to be full steam ahead. And of course, services we provide to the daily population within the city, the workforce population of 680,000, is not recognised within the core grant. So we still have some serious work to do on this, which leads into the second point. Resource Allocation Sub had, and with the meeting with the Service Committee Chairman, had asked us to be more ambitious on the savings programme in light of those facts and the likely direction of travel on that. Members, you'll see in there that there is a savings proposal which starts at 13 million and ramps up. That is not the overall savings that will need to be achieved. If we look at the overall piece, by the time we get to 2930, we will need to be fixing where we are with the core. So there is work that needs doing as part of that, and advocacy for what level of funding we get for the services we provide for the nation, how much we can provide for the daily population of the city, and then a radical look when we know what that funding level is, a radical look at what services this organisation can afford to provide within its local government envelope. So to highlight, those are the two key pieces there. In that environment, MHCLG have been very clear, both in the provisional settlement and in the final settlement, that they expect councils to make full use of their tax setting powers. This year for council tax, there is still a referendum of 4.99%, after which we are one of the 6 authorities for which there is no longer a referendum threshold. So in 27-28 going forwards, there is no referendum threshold. Additionally, you'll see in the paper recommendations for the business rate premium and an increase in that. So that goes to the heart of addressing tax setting for areas in which we have control, that are within the control of you making those recommendations to court. On the tax setting, those proposals have been to the ratepayers and the residents meeting. There was no pushback on those proposals, so I feel confident in recommending them to you for your consideration. The final point then is to flag, as part of your budget setting considerations, I make a statement, a section 25 statement on the adequacy of reserves, just to draw to your attention there the fragility of the housing revenue account. And I'll pause there.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Chris, you want to say something? I was going to just, I just wanted, I had sort of 5 points here, just reinforcing what the Chamberlain said. One, I think it'd be helpful to get your views. The Chamberlain's team is suggesting that we use the transitional funding to support what I call pan-London activities. I think that's the right approach because it doesn't go to our sort of core, what I call council spending. That I think is a sensible proposition, and you'll see that's really on the top of page 6. I don't propose to do much more about the HRA here because we know that we're waiting for this capitalisation direction early next month. I think what I'm really interested in your views on the £13 million savings. Personally, I don't think that's enough, and I think it's quick enough, but I'd love your views on that. I think the proposal on the capital programme is sensible, and just to reinforce the point again on the BRP, I said that went through without any pushback at all from our business ratepayers. We have continued this slightly hypothecated approach for using BRP and the police grant to fund the police and security. That's clearly going to be under pressure now to support more local services, and the chance of us, I suspect, of not of keeping any council tax increase next year at the current level seems to be unrealistic, but that will be next year's problem. But those are my thoughts. That I love your own response on those. Anyhow, I think the basic recommendations here are pretty sensible. We haven't got much to do with it, but I'm going to go to Chris first, then Michael.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Three brief points from me. I mean, taking the first point that the Chamberlain made to us, the 3-year settlement transitional relief is, of course, extraordinarily welcome, but it is only a stay of execution. the core budget remains the challenge. And if we do not resolve that in that period of time, in the period of time we've got, then we will be facing the same problem we faced when the preliminary announcement was made this year. And to that end, I don't want, therefore, Chairman, I don't believe it's right that officers should, let's say, take the foot off the accelerator and say, oh, it's okay, we've got a couple of years, we'll worry about this when we get to it. We have to work solidly and doggedly from now on with government to ensure that we are not put in that position where our business employment is not recognised, our business figures are not recognised by government. So there's a big job of work to do with government, and frankly it should start now, not start in a year or two's time. That's the first point. Second point is to support you, Chairman, on the level of ambition on savings. I don't think it's enough. I think for the size of organisation we are, if you were to compare us with any other any local authority in the land, you would find they are having to face and have had to face over the years much more ambitious levels of savings. And I think we should revisit that. I think we should be much more looking for where there is duplication, where there is, where there are areas where we can genuinely save money. This is not something that sits easily in the culture of the corporation, I might add, in my experience, but I do think it's something we absolutely have to tackle. And the third point I want to make is just around taxation. Because whether it's council tax or indeed the business rate premium, again, many other authorities, and I've sat on many of them, wouldn't just do this and think about this on an annualized basis. They would be thinking 3 years ahead about what we need to do next year, what we need to do the year after, and what we need to do the year after that. And frankly, I think we should be taking a similar pattern of planning on taxation rather than just visiting it annually and saying, what shall we do this year? And I think we could do that. I think there's some scope to do that. I mean, I think on council tax, it's just worth reminding ourselves that my understanding is, the sums are not great here for us with council tax. I mean, even if we raise our council tax by some 80%, I'm told that would only bring in £5 million into the coffers, which a welcome 5 million, no doubt, but nevertheless, for an 80% increase in council tax, that's the challenge we've got there. And likewise, the business rate premium, we can only go so far with that, particularly in respect of how it impacts on our small businesses in the city rather than our large businesses. So those would be my points.
No, thank you. I think there are two issues. One is going to say, one, I've very much got 2930 in my head at the moment. I certainly won't be around, but I think that's where we've got to start thinking really down there. And I think the issue on the pan-London issues, I think that becomes a real point of responsibility for you, I think, and the Deputy Chair of Policy to argue that case, because we can't be expected to support statutory services if we're going to get paid for them. Michael.
I broadly agree with everything you and the Chairman of Policy have said. I do just think, we've got to be really careful, because if I certainly agree with cutting and making sure we're as efficient and as lean as mean as we can as soon as we can. I think that's absolutely vital, clearly. But I think we've got to be really careful about planning income, because civil servants look at us and say, well, if you can get more money from somewhere else, then we're going to take it away from you.
Yep.
And I think it's a really difficult issue. So I'm slightly different from Chris in that respect, because and this could be handled very carefully and not necessarily in full glare of floodlights, if you understand what I mean. I think it's really it's essential that we do get recognised for the work we do. And you're absolutely right, Chairman, that these two chaps have got to push like heck with government, with relevant officer support. It's absolutely clear. But I think we've just got to not lead the government into saying, well, you can do X and Y. You've done a bit already, so it's no problem. I think we've got to position ourselves really carefully. It's a bit like whenever we've taken something out of city fund and put it to city's estate. It seems like a very easy thing to do. I know we've got problems on city estate now, but which is partly because we've done that. But also every time the government sees that we can do that, they say, well, why don't you do some more? Because they don't want to give us the money. I'm sorry to bat off, but I think it's a really difficult set of moving parts that we have to be very careful how we handle them. And so, yes, being as efficient as we can, without any doubt, that might come in useful. Anyway, I'm very efficient in what we do. But I just think we can't just assume that we're going to be able to raise money.
Okay, thank you.
Like that.
I'm very lucky. I can be a quite hard-nosed Scrooge here. I'll leave the diplomacy to Chris and James, which is much more important, I think, in terms of negotiation. I agree with you. But James.
So, Chairman, look, as in previous meetings, I'm quite conscious about what we're, how much of this we will have in public versus non-public, and I just think perhaps as we think about sort of strategy and stuff and what we might or might not do, I think some of it might be better off in non-public session. That said, look, I think with what is broadly being proposed, I am supportive of. I'm cautious about the lack of feedback we had at the ratepayers meeting on BRP, because it wasn't clear to me that we had very strong business representation there, and I'm much more cautious actually about the pushback we're going to get. Related to that, look, I am hypothecating, I think, for police and security in the broadest sense, I'm comfortable with. I noticed in the paper here we're sort of seeking to broaden that to services related to the sort of daytime population. I thought that went sort of broader than what we had discussed in other forums. And again, I'm cautious about whether we should be doing this now and whether we need to do it now, because I suspect the money that's being raised could be ring-fenced entirely for security in the broader sense and some of the projects we've got. And I would just like to understand that. I think on council tax, I think it is inevitable that although it doesn't raise much money, we are going to have to do something there, because to the extent that we don't do something out of there and we remain out of lockstep, I think we will always be criticised for doing that. And really the only point I want to say here, I think about the sort of look forward, is I don't think this should just be about savings. I think we also need to be looking at the operating model for some of our services and institutions such as the Barbican that come out of the City Fund. Also recognising that might the changed operating model may take more than 3 years, but I think as we think about our finances in the broader sense, and I think something that you've been pushing for, Chairman, is we've got to look at it over a much longer period, recognising we've got essentially the short-term pressure of the cliff edge on the transitional arrangement, but we need to be looking long-term as well. Thank you.
Certainly agree with that, Nathan.
Thank you. Martha.
Some of the points have been aired that I was going to make, so I'm just going to focus on just 2 things that have come to mind. I know this paper came out late, and I appreciate, Henry, the reasons that you stated, but still there's a lot of detail in there that needs to be digested. And I haven't read everything, I have to admit that, because it did come out late and it's trying to fit in, all these pages in for a very important topic today. But there's 2 things that do stand out for me, really just looking at this quite briefly, where nothing has been mentioned. One is we haven't explored, do we use anything from our city estate, in essence, to support services? I know we're cutting, but actually we are sitting on some money that we can use slightly better than we're currently using. And secondly, there is, we talk about the Pan London services, but nowhere has it been explored again, whether we just kind of get rid of some of these services totally and give them to a company that could run it for profit or however means they want to. And that just takes that responsibility completely out from us. So I'm just putting those 2 things out there as exploration. If it probably is not, maybe not part of this committee, might be PNR, and I mention it because he's sitting here today, the chair of PNR. But it's just things that I just sometimes feel that we're not looking at everything as a whole. We just look at some things a little bit too isolated.
Okay, I'm going to take all these questions first, and Chairman, I think we had Sandra, sorry.
Thank you. I agree with all the points made so far. It strikes me that we need a forensic review of our spend across the board, looking at macro and micro spends. We need to look very closely at headcount, which seems to, I hear, flip from 3,600 to 4,500 in 16 months, it seems to me. So we've got to look really hard at every item of spend. But as James said, we need to look at whether we've got the right structure in our city fund. Should all those things be in the city fund? And again, we need to talk about tactics and politics with the government about particularly our extraordinary spends on things like port health.
Thank you. Thank you. Paul.
Thank you, Jim. Just one specific point, really following up from James's comments about the BRP. I think we're being asked to take a step too far by RASC, looking at the section 2.6 on page 10, fully supportive of a 4-year plan to ring fence the increases and use them for that purpose. But at this point in time, when we're looking at this cliff edge in 3 years' time, to go as far as 2.7 and to have a long-term strategy agreement today just seems to be rash. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, I'm keen to understand how the current situation will impact on the corporation's decision about where to invest, what to invest in, to ensure that we get the best return for our money.
Okay, thank you. Stephen. And Michael. Yeah, Steve. Oh, I got two of you. Okay. Steve, you go first, and I'll Stephen follow.
Okay. Okay, so I think some of the things I want to say, I've been saying ever since I've been a councillor, which is nearly 4 years now. Goes quickly, doesn't it? But the two words, I think the key words are the culture of the organisation and the efficiency of the organisation. And we as members in various places have been talking about that ever since I've been a councillor. What we've actually achieved as members, I think we need to question ourselves. I think we actually need to learn from the mistakes that has been made in the past, and there have been quite a few in the corporation. We need to manage the present, but we need to lead for the future. So I don't think we should be ducking out, making difficult decisions now, because we've got a couple of years before things get worse. I think there is a big issue, an existential issue about what the corporation should do in the future. We should appreciate what we've been doing for many hundreds of years, but we should actually work out how we survive for the next 100 years. And that is about what we do, but it's also, as people have said, about if we're going to continue to do things, what's the cost of doing that, and can we do things differently? As James has said, I think there's some things that perhaps need to be discussed in non-public.
Yeah.
But we did make a decision not too long ago, which is costing us £10 million. And I don't know whether that 10 million, which I think we are attempting to recover over the near future, whether that's in addition to the £13 million that we're expecting the corporation to save. So I think that would be important to know that. Does the champion know what I'm talking about there? Ambition 25. So I think I think that is really important. And again, I agree with Martha. There are some things that we do. The animal reception centre at Heathrow. I was a lone voice on Port Health. Why are we running that as a loss? If we can't actually run that without it costing us money, then why are we running it? Now, that conversation has been going on for 4 years. As members, we have not bit the bullet. We've got to bite some bullets. Maybe some that are coming up now. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Gosh, I'm going to go Stephen first.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I think these papers were far too late. I understand the circumstances, but I think it's unacceptable, frankly. And I think this meeting should have been pushed back, or I think this item should have been scheduled for a later meeting, because we have not had a chance to scrutinise these properly, and this is a big, big decision. So I'll just say that here now. Having said that, look, I agree with you, Chair. The level of savings here is inadequate. It feels to me like the solution is, rather than focusing on savings, we'll just dump the cost on residents and businesses, which I don't think is right, especially businesses. Look, I think the business rates premium does make the city less competitive than neighbouring boroughs. And we have to be conscious of that. That is the reality. So I agree with Paul's comments in that regard. In terms of whether businesses pushed back, I think the point's already been made that they're probably, to say they didn't push back because of the outcome of a one meeting is probably not fair. Businesses I've spoken to are concerned about paying more business rates. They are under enormous pressure. The economy's not in great shape. We are piling on the pressure with the business rates premium. So I find that quite disconcerting. And the final thing I'll say, which hasn't been mentioned yet, is just on City Estate. And Chair, I think you and I probably feel similarly about this, but the drawdown rate of 5.2% is not sustainable. And we have to address that. Thank you.
And I agree with you, Taylor, that of course that's a separate paper, but you know, I think quite a lot of these issues we're going to take into private, I suspect. But let's just try and get through this lot first. Martha, you had one follow up. And then got James.
I do, yes. First of all, to say I agree with Stephen over here about the papers, but you've heard that comment several times from me. I don't need to repeat it, but that's fine. But it is an important comment, though, Henry. The comment I have is because every time I mention City Estate, the people down this end of the table go as if I am kind of about to kill off the family silver when I mention that. The reason I mention it is quite important because suddenly we're going to be doing these cuts affecting businesses and residents. And frankly, if we continue spending the way we are doing and the image we're portraying about ourselves with our city estates, whether through these community dinners and the like, given the shots I'm hearing outside today, I think they're very much likely that we're going to be shooting ourselves like this. So we need to be careful because there's a very bad PR message we're sending there that you lot out there eat cake whilst we just continue the way we're acting over here. So I think we need to be really conscious of what we're doing internally and externally.
No, I completely get that, but I think how we get value from City Estate is a separate issue as to whether we wade into it for other purposes. As Stephen said, the drawdown rate has been totally and utterly unsustainable. James, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. A very brief point on the papers because I didn't get them at all. But I think that when you've got this issue, we do need to look at whether or not we add in an extra meeting or a delayed meeting or whatever to give us more time to get into the depth, because it's an important issue. But to that important issue, my main request is that I think we as a committee need a very clear statement of what obligations we have that are genuine legal obligations that we must supply, because we're going to be making some very tough decisions, but we need a very clear list of all the things that we choose to do that we're not fully obliged to do. And if we haven't got that clarity, it'll be very difficult to give members input to what we should cut. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I think, and Chamberlain can correct me, I think we have to agree these items. I think there's a lot of items we've parked structurally, which are, I think, partly for finance to deal with and partly for policy to deal with, but and some of these are in non-private. But I think we need to agree a budget and recommend it for the next civic year, and that involves the items there. There's clearly a number of comments on item 1.3, which is what savings we can achieve. But I think essentially, in order to keep going, we have to agree these. Whatever we think about other issues that are structural or governance, I think I'm very happy to bring this back into our next meeting if I'm still around. But I just think we have to accept there's a limit to what we can do here. I had somebody else, Oliver, and then I go back to Chamberlain. Oh, Michael, sorry. Oh, and then you, yeah.
The second home premium was brought in about 12 months ago, and according to the records that I can find, about 80 councils have introduced it so far, but a number, nearly 20, are now pulling back. They have understood what I suspect is the correct view on this, that it's both undesirable and unnecessary and unhelpful for, particularly here, where many of the people who reside run businesses or use them for quasi-business purposes. I think that, and combining with the business rate premium, we're not sending the right message that way, it seems to me, which is that we should be sending that we are open for business of every kind, and we want to encourage businesses to come here, small businesses, large businesses. every kind of business, and that we should be looking much more severely at our expenditure than endlessly raising more money and splurging more money on services. It seems to me that no wonder people say this has now become a quasi-socialist square mile, because it's not focusing on entrepreneurship and business startups and the like, and that is what we should be doing. And we shouldn't take our eye off the ball. And I think that I remember raising this a year or two ago, but I think its time will come. It's coming now.
I suspect this time will come next year. I agree with you. We raised it last year, not least to support the increasing bill for homelessness. It's raised about 2.8 million. The bill for homelessness is about the same. So it did do what it was supposed to achieve. I suspect that next year, if we have to start looking at council tax rates across the board, that should definitely come back into the equation again. But I think it
I do hope so.
Yep.
I really do.
Michael.
Chairman, I think we've got to approve. I personally think we've got to approve these because we've got to move on, because we've got a deadline by which to do it. It's regrettable that the government chooses to do that, with virtually no time frame for any council to look at their finances, and in particular ours, because of the special arrangements. Sorry, the botch, whatever the botch is called, transitional arrangements for the other 2 years. But I do think it's, even though we're in public session, we've got to be really clear. City estate cannot afford to subsidise city fund. Why? Because all the services that are provided by cities estate need the income from cities estates capital in order to provide them. If we start spending the capital, we will have even less money, and it will go further into deficit. I agree with your point about the sustainable or non-sustainable rate, but whatever you do, it's just a fallacy. We cannot use that. And every time someone suggests that we use cities estate, it gives credibility to those in government that want to reduce our funding further. It is self-defeating. It is absolutely ridiculous. And frankly, what we do, with some pomp and circumstance, I agree, with some entertainment, is what government after government and opposition after opposition value us for, because we are facilitating those conversations and those events. So I think to think that somebody out there in the business is thinking we shouldn't be spending any money on those sort of hospitality things, I think that's not right. I'm sure we can find one or two, but by and large, it's not what the big businesses think. So I think we need to approve this and then not keep the cutting. I mean, I think 13 million is the start point, not the finish point.
No, I agree.
And we all know that if we don't get the transitional, if we don't get the permanent settlement right, we're going to have to cut a big item of expenditure, and there is only one that we can cut.
Thank you. Andrew, you want to finish off?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So really only 2 points to make over here. There's a general theme that members have been focusing on, and it's to do with savings. And I like what Michael said, 13 is the starting, it can't be the end position. To that extent, I know, Chair, that you and I have had quite a few conversations with our officers. So maybe a suggestion on that is for our next meeting, which I think is in April, even if it's a rough transformational program, even if it's just a framework as to what that's looking like for the next 4 or 5 years, be brought to Chris's point about starting to look long term. So at least that's on the plate. That relates to the second point that I wanted to make. It's not just on us, and it relates to the terms of reference agenda item. I think there's a scrutiny function that needs to be played over here as well, because if we are looking at those savings numbers in terms of how we can deliver our services better, I do think that fellow members on service committees that they sit on, there's a greater scrutiny role that has to be played, which then links the savings numbers to the delivery of service and the scrutiny in how that's being done, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline, you've got a lot of stuff there. I just wanted to reinforce the point. I completely accept the point about late papers. I'm the first person to throw them out, but I think you have to understand this was somebody else created the problems for us. And, I don't mind what your politics are. If somebody, I deal with financial reports the whole time, and if somebody gives you numbers late, doesn't matter what that policy, it's just incompetent. And we've had to deal with it. I do think we have to understand that our Chamberlain's team has done an incredibly good job, a very frustrating job to turn this stuff around 3 times. It's just as unacceptable to me as anybody, but we've had to live with what we've had to live with, and I just think it's I completely understand the point, and I was the first person to throw out late papers, but we are really on a deadline here, and we've had to deal with a totally unacceptable and difficult situation, and I just think as long as we make that point clear for future years, whatever the colour of government, they got to understand you need numbers early in order to plan long term. I'm going to say nothing more. Otherwise, I'm going to get really cross. Caroline.
Thank you, Chairman, for those comments, because I think underpinning this is the fact that until the 9th of February, I didn't know what we were going to be putting in this for 27-28 onwards. Now you have an entire budget in front of you framed to give you that, and I do appreciate that it is a lot to read through, and I do appreciate the detail that goes into it, but let's not take defeat out of the jaws of victory, that we actually have transitional relief, a bespoke settlement, and we have time to plan. So going to the heart of the savings programme, and members, that theme of being more ambitious, where are we with it? The methodology that we've taken to it is, let's put to one side the funding for the Pan London and the statutory services, which are not funded from government at the moment. Let's put that to one side, because that is going to take a considerable amount of time to effect. We've got to have conversations around what government fund. If they don't fund it, we need to be deciding as an organisation what we do with those services, all of which would presumably need consultation, so it is not going to be sorted by 27 to 28. So to give you that time frame, what we've proposed in this paper is we start at 13 million, we ramp it up to 23 million the following year, after which we are into the big ticket items of what happens on the basis of conversations with government, other government departments and other public bodies as to who's going to fund these statutory services that are there for London and the nation. The bit on the daily population we need to think through. To answer James Thompson's question about the business rate premium and why the recommendation is in there to extend it beyond security, is without that we've got an even bigger hole. So looking at the daily population, the workforce population, and therefore what businesses are contributing to the security of the square mile and the environment of the square mile, seems to us as officers to be a reasonable proposal to be asking businesses to make a contribution towards. So that's why it's in there. Take the point on future planning. I would say it's a balance, and obviously it's a balance on tax setting, members, that we need to be very cognizant of in terms of income planning and what people are able to afford. In terms of the second home premium, while I'm on tax setting, that brings in 2.8 million, as the chairman's referred to. The pressure on homelessness is over 3 million now. That is unfunded. That isn't covered by the grant. So it is really important to retain the 2.8 million, and collection rates are good on that. In terms of the decision as to what to invest in, City Fund's investment portfolio is property. There are no financial investments in there. It's only money market funds, so it's investment properties, and those are generally geared ground rents. You've got item 21 on the papers today, which will go through the city surveyor's strategy on City Fund. So I suggest we defer that to that point. On City's estate, we'll come on to the budget there. I think, I mean, my observation is, if anyone thinks City's estate is the saviour for covering the costs of City Fund, it is not. And we'll come on to the introduction to that, but I'm looking at 9 years recovery period before the balance sheet gets back to where we are now, and a 14-year horizon for break even in income and expenditure. It is under considerable pressure. Now, obviously, members, there is a strategy on that paper as well to make radical decisions about what is done, but it is not a fund that is in any position to be funding other services than the ones it's currently trying to deal with. So I think those are the main points. Sorry. Oh, the long-term strategy for the, sorry, Sonia, did you want to say something?
So this was the point that that was made around the long-term strategy of the BRP on 2.6, I believe. The reason for recommending the long-term strategy on making sure that any future BRP or business rate premium allocated amounts are ring-fenced to support future operational property estate. And this is where we've had some significant challenges around our current estate and where we haven't got the funding set aside. This will allow us to protect police, justice, security, and potentially environmental health in relation to ring fencing it and able to fund those areas without having to dispose of further properties or investment property and lose further income under city fund. So it is a mechanism to put a sustainable strategic long-term vision around that.
And then just picking up on the comment that's been made over the operating model and services, obviously with the sorts of decisions and discussions that are going to need to take place on the city fund services, that is one of the key areas that will need to be considered. The transformation work as well will focus in these areas. Happy to cover in private session any further detail that the members want to go through.
But Chairman, I think we need to agree these items here today. I think that's the point. It seems to me that we should. I agree with Andrew. There's a number of points here that we should bring back to finance or policy at a later stage. But I just, in terms of the budget setting for this year, I think we've detected some ambition. The 13, really should be a minimum. We should be more ambitious. I think we've got some concerns about BRP, but hopefully we can live with it. And picking up Sonia's points, I think we've done it with the way we are levying it is right. We have to be very conscious of the effect that has on businesses, particularly small ones. But I don't think we can do. And we picked up the concerns about savings and not least staff-related costs, which obviously for another time. But I think probably where I am, I think we need to agree these items for City Fund. I'm totally with all bar two. I think here that I think City Estate and City Fund, never the twain shall meet as far as I'm concerned. They're two very different creatures. But anyhow, we can have that debate in non-private if we want it. But does anybody else have any other major source of disagreement with what we were being asked to approve here on 1 to 1.9? We picked up the issue about the likelihood that whatever we do next year, however ambitious and berserk we might go with BRP or with council tax, it's not going to be enough to bridge the gap. We know that. So I think we have to accept that. And there's some fundamental issues that I don't think are for us to agree here. I think we need to put them back on the agenda for April. I think that the chair of policy will certainly pick these up as well. They're all encompassing here. And I just think I think we've now got the mood of members right that we can't carry on as we have been. But I think in terms of the budget, I don't want to push you, but I would like to encourage you to agree these recommendations as they're tabled.
We've got to agree with that. Agreed.
I think
just put them to us.
Thank you. Can we and the same on 2. I'm assuming I'm taking the whole lot.
Yes,
as rest.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, and I'll make sure that your concerns are certainly reflected in what I may have to say to court in March as well. Sorry, Sonia, you want to say something?
Chair, there's just one I guess recommendation that requires some decision around how much of the transitional relief, the remaining transitional relief is transferred to operational property reserve.
Can we come?
I think that can be left to.
What I'm really worried about, and I go back, it won't be my issue, but I'm really worried about 2930, and I think we have to be really, really careful to ensure that we have a proper cushion for 2930. Okay, is that an issue? It's a long term. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, members. Let's move on to the next item.
Chairman, thank you. Item 8, Cities and State Budget Report, Medium Term Financial Strategy Report of the Chamberlain for decision in your late supplementary pack, members, pages 149 to 194.
And I think, Chamberlain, you're going to kick this off again?
I think largely, Chairman, I've said what I was going to say on Cities Estate, other than to say the strategy is similar. And I think also in the work that we've done on City Fund in looking at what we are supporting for London, I'm also conscious that we have taken on responsibilities for some of the open spaces, most latterly from the GLC when the GLC was disbanded. So again, the recommendation there is to really look on the medium term and longer term strategy as to what actually is paid for with the Cities Estate.
Before I open that, can I just make 3 points? One, I think the vision for City Estate has got to be 20 years. I think it can't be anything less than that. We got to accept that. And I think there's a point here. We shouldn't agree a new capital project for 9 years. I suspect that should, my view, that should be 15 years. I think that's one point. I think two, the work on the charities review, I think is quite important. We've got to get these charities onto a level footing. So I do encourage you to support the spending on that. And the last point is that the drawdown has been totally unacceptable. If you look at page 153, if you look at the gap between the dotted line, just assets compared to CPI, and the actual assets, if we carry on like this, we are destroying value at a most unacceptable rate. It is just, we've got to get this right, and we've got to also bear in mind that from 2044 onwards we start repaying the public placement. So my view is that we don't do anything major with City Estate, one, until it's stabilised, and we've got to leave this for our successors in good shape. Sorry, Chairman, you want to add something? So, sorry, Chairman, I forgot to say as well, it's in relation to what is the appropriate level of drawdown. That is a piece of work we need to do this year. So that, well, I think it should be 3%, you know, Chairman. I have heard your views, Chairman. At the most. So comments, Michael.
I agree with what you're saying. One, it's just a more general point, and one that's a consequence of needing to get into a better financial position. I think we need to be careful how this extra income or lower cost is dealt with, because some of our stakeholders, including voters in terms of the civic elections, are having to pay vast amounts to utilise the facilities that are part of what brings the city together. I'm talking about ward clubs, city, not ward clubs so much, city livery companies and so on. And I just think it's getting pretty silly. And this is a consequence. I know it's not for debate today, but we need to be careful how these recommendations are implemented, because it gets passed down the line, and then recommendation, you know, I've got to get another £500,000, and oh well, we'll bung, you know, 25% or 30% or 50% on things, and I think that's when we start getting a bad name, and we just need to be careful how we do it.
No, and I think that's why I agree with Martha's comment. We've got to be very careful that we spend this. We external perception, and we've got to make sure we spend our City Estate investments properly, so that we don't create this them and us scenario, which I think is difficult. Does anybody else have any other comments on City Estate? I mean, much of this underlying stuff is the same, but if I'm gonna, there's Bethany.
It's just a comment on the Cities Estate spending, and I know there's been some talk about quasi-socialist square mile and not having the events that we currently do being a harmful thing. I'd like to know exactly how much every year we do spend on these events, because I think it's important to know, and it could be an area that we can cut spend. And I think, you know, for the optics of it, and you may say you're not going to find people who find it obscene that we have these lavish events. I think we will find people, certainly in my ward there are. And then you're looking at the small businesses with the business rates. That's one of the things I hear most often when I'm out and about from the small businesses in my ward, is complaining about business rates. So you've got a weird kind of discrepancy there, and it doesn't marry up for the voters, I don't think.
And I completely agree with you on the optics. I think we have to be very conscious of that. We have, as you know, at the last meeting, threw out an increase for dinners, which was deeply unpopular. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here, Beth, and I completely agree with you. But it's all we can do as finance is make the point and encourage other committees. We can either set the envelope, but encourage other committees to make some decisions, which I know are going to be unpopular. But I'm pretty clear in my mind what we should be doing. Are we? I think the point's well made. I think we can. Are we happy to agree this? Oh, thank you. Okay. And that's all these items on whichever screens they are. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Turning to item 9, budget monitoring for Q3, report of the Chamberlain for decision, page 21 through 46 of your main packs.
Is this Sonia or? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is just to provide you an update on Q3 budget monitoring position, which is better than Q2. So you're aware that robust measures have been taken to bring down the previous deficits that have been highlighted, and they continue to be done through Q4. I just wanted to highlight in this report, there are some recommendations that are being requested from Finance Committee contingency. These are highlighted under page 22, and we will look for members' support in recommending those against your item agenda number 13.
Thank you. So any questions? I had 2 points just to add here. One, I think we should agree these recommendations. I've sort of agreed already with the Deputy Chair that if we do have any underspends, we're not going to carry them forward. I think that creates a careless atmosphere for the future. So I think we should just take the numbers as spent, and there is a carry forward meeting agreed after year end. But I think that's the first point. And I think the second point is that you'll see one thing I have asked the Chamber to think about is that we're always getting these underspends. Which sound like they're savings. They're actually not. They're a result of largely increased investment income. And I think it's really quite important that we separate the two. There's a very big difference between savings and additional income. And I think it's really, really important that what we call the net underspend is actually better defined in future so we can understand where it's coming from. Paul.
Chairman, I did note before the meeting, just a question for the officers about the extra income of £13 million on interest that you're referring to. I've been assured that there is a new cash flow strategy in place to improve that. Could I just ask officers how much better we could have done with those funds? It must have been 300 and something million pounds, which has been unallocated spend. How much better we could have done with those funds in a different place, and what changes you have made in the cash flow procedures?
So Chairman, on that, for City Fund, we do not invest in financial investments. This is the not gambling with taxpayers' money prudency on City Fund. In terms of where has that gone, it's gone into the money market fund. So effectively what you see is that uptick in the interest, the 13 million more, or whatever it was on City Fund, is largely because that money has been invested on money market funds, and that's given us a net benefit to City Fund. In terms of City's estate, everything is invested, so we only draw down what we need to draw down on the cash flow. So in terms of the cash flow monitoring, we do that on a monthly basis. If we don't need the drawdown of the financial investment, or we don't need the sale of a particular asset, that is planned in. So in effect, we're still keeping it within the investment portfolio for longer. So I feel comfortable and confident that what we are doing is, now we've got much better forecasting on the project spend. We're not divesting in advance of need. Thank you.
Oliver.
Could I touch on one small matter? But it's a good example, it seems to me, of how we have not succeeded in getting best value. At page 22, there's a potential deficit on West Ham Park, which refers to £108,000 on paragraph 17 of the appendix. Some years ago, it was proposed that redundant glass houses should be sold for housing, and an agreement was reached on the West Ham Park Committee. Since then, no action at all. I think it must be now 5 years. where we have simply sat on a wasted asset of ground, doing nothing, earning nothing, bringing nothing in, and raising, and now we require more money for West Ham Park, whereas it could have had, I think the offer was £17 million. That's a very good example, it seems to me, of the lamentable failure to drive things through.
You caught me on the hop there, Oliver.
Good, that's nice. I'm glad to hear that.
I think Katie's going to answer.
Yes.
I think Katie's going to answer that question at that point.
Fine. So, so just to confirm, the nursery site is still something we are pursuing. The issue that we had was that Newham had been going through their local plan, and they decided to designate it as Metropolitan Greenbelt, which obviously put a real hold and a blocker in terms of what we could do. So we have submitted quite strong representations into that process. They have now taken that out of their local plan, and we are now able to start that project back up again. And we're obviously not starting from the standing stop. So we are working with the West Ham Park Committee right now to explore the art of the possible in terms of what the market will currently has appetite for on that site. So we are hopeful that that could be part of the financial sustainability for the committee going forward. And happy to answer any other questions on that spend as well, if there are further questions.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really point for West Ham Committee, but I think your generic point is more.
It's a broader point. Yeah. It's an example. What I'm saying, it's an example, and I am right. It's 5-6 years since we had a deal, we had an agreement, which I and Ian Luder put together. And absolutely nothing has happened in 5 or 6 years. And you may say you've got all these things going on now, but you know something? It's been sitting there growing weeds and earning no money for 5 years.
Okay.
Bad business. Bad way to run a business.
I think, Oliver, can I jump in there? I think there's two issues. One reason why I think the charities review is so important is that the charities are put onto their own accountable footing, which encourages them to get on with things. But the generic point is we can make sure the city surveyor he has been made very aware we don't want redundant properties sitting there doing nothing. So I think we can echo that point again here and try and ask the city surveyor again to double check through the list of operational properties not being used, because I agree with you. If we're not using them, we should get rid of them or sell them.
Hardly dare mention it, but I went round the Barbican car parks again today for the third time.
Okay.
And do you know something? They look like something out of Apocalypse Now. They are deserted, empty, redundant, wasted, useless.
Yeah. I think the point is the Finance Committee is fully supportive of all attempts to get rid of unused operational properties. I just think we can go to the detail here. Sandra.
Just one point while we're talking about things that haven't gone well, and I do mention this quite often, Black Raven Court, we cannot let there be another project where we spend good money to provide properties, homes for people on the waiting lists. And when they're completed, 3 years later, still not occupied, we get no rent, people have got no homes, and we have a bad reputation. Lose, lose, lose. We cannot let that happen again. And on the car parks, they're assets. They could be used.
Thank you. I think we've noted quite a lot of comments there. Thank you. Can we note and agree the paper? Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 10 is improving compliance and the proper use of corporate P cards with all of the Chamberlain for information, page 47 through 50, and an appendix on pages 119 to 122.
Matt, did you want to make a comment on this? We had a discussion this morning, which I've also spoken to the Chair of Audit and Risk, actually, but do you want to just start off?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just recognising this is perhaps a relatively small issue compared to what you've been debating already this afternoon. And actually, this is the first time we've looked, whilst we looked at P card usage a lot over the years, this is the first time we've looked at it through this particular lens, a slightly different approach. So I set out in the report two aspects of non-compliance on the proper use of P cards. The first is people broadly following the process, but just not doing that very well. And then the second is people not following a significant part of the process at all. And that's what we've focused on this time round. So that is the particular issue there is where people use a P card and they fail to submit an expense report at all. Now, when P card users do that, there is no visibility of that expenditure whatsoever the process for payment of P card expenses, it just results in the bill being paid, and there's no opportunity for management to scrutinise that expenditure. And the report sets out the volume of transactions that actually relates to. So there was a question received in advance of the committee around card holder training. There's no specific card holder training per se, although all people that are issued with a P card do sign up to the terms and conditions of use, and within that includes accounting for expenses correctly. Just a reminder that the P cards are used for operational expenditure. They're not used for the reason for issue is not for incidental expenses that officers might incur. These are for operational purchases. It's an efficient way of doing that. But the point is, we just have no visibility over those transactions that we've identified. The reason why we're sort of focusing on this is that this just feels like this is an area where we just need better discipline. It's actually quite a simple thing for people to complete their expense reports and submit those transactions for review. We're trying to create a culture whereby everyone recognises and understands and follows the rules. So we're really just pushing for better discipline here. We've got a really robust management action plan to try and move things forward, which includes exploring some system enhancements that will raise the visibility of these transactions. But in the short term, the key really is about more robust monitoring and actually stepping in and bringing some sanctions, which largely involves taking away cards where they're not used properly.
I mean, I think this is in what we're just talking about is small issues. But if you look at the conclusion, top of page 49, there's no management oversight of expenditure. We've got £90,000 of non-compliant items. It's just not acceptable, quite honestly. And I've referred this to the chairman of Audit and Risk because somehow or other, and it's not just a system upgrade. I think this needs more manual oversight, and supervisors need to take responsibility for such expenditure. But that's what we do at work. But I just leave it with Matt and the audit risk. I think somewhere down the line, £90,000 non-compliant expenditure is not terribly clever in anybody's language. So, Chris.
Well, I think it's important, the last point that was made about sanctions. We should take these cards away from people who do not comply, and we should do it, not keep threatening it. We should actually make an example of a few people who are not behaving appropriately and take their cards away. That's the only way you'll start to reduce this abuse.
No, I agree. Sandra?
This is an example of one of the micro things I spoke about earlier. If we're going to change the culture, if we're going to get people to spend wisely, we need to use our performance management systems to let people know that this is not acceptable. We can't have people spending £90,000 for no good reason. We don't know. We're not cited on it. It's a culture change. It's a small step, but we need to start.
No, thank you. Anne.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go further than performance management and, disciplinary issues. And I think you said you don't know what this expenditure has been on. So you don't know that all this expenditure has been for the right purposes. You actually don't know. Yes.
Okay. Jeanette?
I agree with everyone. This was the one paper, and papers are really complicated, and I struggled with many of them. But this one is a simple paper, and I felt that it had an appearance as if we're happy as an organisation for people to go around like this. We didn't seem particularly from the paper to be worried about these behaviours. It was like we must do something else rather than in a regulatory environment. If something like this occurred, it would be either a sacking offence or you would have your certificate of regulatory approval taken away immediately. And I just wondered if we could start seeing a little bit more teeth on this.
Thank you. Hugh. Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. Changing the focus from the money to the cards, I'm shocked that we have 1,000 cards in use at the moment. Is it necessary that we have so many procurement cards issued? Are we setting ourselves up to fail? And should we be surprised that 18% of them are not compliant? Chairman.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. well, Hugh's just highlighted one of the key stats, but the key stats here are 1,000 cards, a huge number, 18% non-compliant, a huge number, not £90,000 that we don't know about, £350,000 that we don't know about, £90,000 that was another number in here, and £200,000 of VAT recovery lost through this. I know it seems small in the context of the budget we've just been talking about. These are serious numbers, and these numbers, dare I say, are actually smaller than some of those numbers we talked about in relation to hospitality and that kind of thing. So I do congratulate the Chief Internal Auditor on this piece of work. I think it's incredibly important, but I think it's also deeply concerning. And I echo Hugh's question, which is, do we need 1,000 P cards? Why are P cards being used for operational expenditure instead of occasional expenses?
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, just one final point. So I think officers are getting a clear steer from where we as members are sitting on this. I don't think it's just a matter for the audit committee. I think probably one for corporate services as well, going back to Sandra's point on performance management as well, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, Chamberlain.
So thank you, members. And the reason why I really wanted this on the agenda today is obviously for you to hear from the Chief Internal Auditor about something which goes to the heart of what Steve was saying earlier about culture. So quite frankly, if we have procedures in place for people to spend money in procurement on procurement cards, so we're not employing as many people in procurement to do roles for this. This is people doing their job and procuring it on a procurement card. So in answer to the question, why 1,000? It's for small level procurement. It was originally anticipated to be a very cost effective way of doing this. It was part of a savings program and we thought, yes, and the controls in place are that management sign it off. Now that is a financial control. It is a really important control. And what the Chief Internal Auditor has flagged to me and to you is that simple management control is not happening. It should be something that we can rely on. That should be the core, that we rely on it, that people sign it off, the people who know what that spend is for are signing it off to say they are happy. The fact that that is not happening goes to the heart of a culture that has emerged. Now, within the new SAP system on expenses, that has to be signed off by the line manager, and the line manager has to click to say that they are happy with that level of spend, and it puts it onto the authorizer. So I think the control is now firmly within a system on expenses, but of course on procurement cards, we need to make sure the same culture is happening. So to bring it back to you, clearly what we thought would work is not working. So now we need to go back to think about what the controls should be in place. But my level of frustration, I think why it's a good call to say Corporate Services Committee as well, is we should be able to rely on a management control to do a management task. So
okay, Michael. Chairman, I mean, it's obviously awful, but we need to do something that will change it. And I think passing it to 2 other committees to work it out is just pushing the thing down the road. I personally would do something dramatic to make the point. I would withdraw all P cards now. I would just do it. It will cause some problems. I'm sure it will cause some problems, but they'll get round them, and then they will realise that we're serious about them complying. If you do anything less, it will be a botch and nothing will happen. So I actually am formally moving. I'm actually formally moving that we instruct the Chamberlain and whoever else to withdraw all P cards with immediate effect.
I second that, Chair.
Okay, seconded.
Could I come in on
You
an observation before you go to the vote? Be prepared for the law of unintended consequences, because everything jams up if we stop spend on P cards, and it also punishes the 70-odd% of people who are doing this appropriately. If I could ask members to give me the
how much time do you need, Chairman?
Give me a couple of weeks to raise this.
Well, what I was going to suggest is that I think we should note quite a lot of support for that proposal, but I think we should ask you and the Internal Audit to come back. We've got a meeting end of April. We need to understand why you need to justify 1,000 cards. We need to understand what management controls are going to come in. What are we going to do to change this system? And if those proposals are not accepted by Finance Committee end of April, then I think we should go ahead and vote on the withdrawal.
Chair, I totally disagree with Michael here. This is the officer decision that should be made. I mean, we have got really big strategic issues, decisions that we need to make. But what we've clearly identified as members here is this is the problem. But we need to leave the Chamberlain and her team.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, Steve. But I think given a very clear steer here of dissatisfaction, I think we need to ask officers to come back to us in short order. We're talking about 2.5 months here. I'm asking you to defer your proposal. Yes. Thank you. Are we unhappy to accept that paper on that basis? Thank you. Okay.
Chairman, thank you. Item 11, Chamberlain's business plan free update for information, page 51 through 54 of appendix at 123.
Can we take this as read? I think we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 12, the Champions Departmental Risk Management Update for information, page 55
can we take this as read? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 13, Central Contingencies for information, page 59, again with appendices, pack 171.
Can we note this and agree what we're hoping to do on the carry forwards? Okay, thank you.
Item 14, Chairman, is questions and matters related to work of the committee asked in public.
I haven't had any others. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 15, any other business consideration at this point?
Can I just take the opportunity to thank, he's not here, Daniel Peaty, unfortunately, is leaving. Oh, he's on the line. Daniel is, if I'm right, becoming the Section 151 officer at Kingston. I think is that public deputy. Really, really sad to lose him. He's been a fantastically supportive member of the whole team. So Daniel, thank you for all your efforts and good luck in Kingston. They're very lucky to have you.
Thank you, Chair. That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Chairman, thank you. Item 16, are members now content to exclude the public at this point?
Really?
Thank you, members, bear with us.